Well, welcome everyone. We are here on today, and I hope this is you all can see us. I hope everyone is coming in to our YouTube channel. I'm Cheryl Clarke.
I'm Gregory Clarke, Dr. Clarke.
Yes, and today we just came online to show you a little bit about who we are and tell you a little bit of who we are. And some people may not know who we are. We are firstly married for almost 30 years next year.
My goodness.
Yeah, married 30 years. We got married. Um, I was 19 when I got married to you.
She robbed the cradle.
And I got married when I was 19. And why we talk about this is because in 30 years of marriage and moving into a space of being married at such a young age, I think I did not know myself and understanding how others may not know themselves. And I think that this is why we went into writing the book. If you haven't know our book that we have, you can go ahead and put that up. The Power of the Four A's. We created this because we said we were heading down divorce. We was heading to divorce court. We were headed down to divorce court. Now, how many of you can relate to what we're saying? Because I think that relationships can struggle when you don't really know how to be. So we create a platform to support couples.
Well, when I think about it is that relationships always take work. And there was a time that we definitely were not working on the relationship. And that was on both parties. And so there are times where we're going to share some insight onto not necessarily who's at fault, what's at fault, but you're recognizing that there is a possibility that you might not be doing something that's appropriate for your relationship. Now, I'm not
Mhm.
talking about you're being negative or you're being something that's always detrimental. Sometimes it's not about evolving. As you start to understand and as we start to discuss either tonight or in further conversations, you start to see how if you don't continue to allow yourself to evolve in the relationship and to be a part of those respective ebbs and flows that will occur, that you might be still stuck in, like, as we said, we've been married almost 30 years. We could be still stuck in 1995 or the year 2000 or 2010 and not recognizing we are in 2024, almost in 2025. And so there are things that Cheryl has changed and upgraded and updated and moved on and become, and the same as myself. And so when you start to recognize that you can't necessarily say, that same old loving from back in the days, it's like that loving from back in the days was great. Now, how did you grow it? How did you expand it? How did you develop it? Or are you just still looking for the same old loving?
Yeah, I think it was like because I was 19, I didn't know myself. You know how many bodies you grow into and how many bodies that we actually look at and
No, and if you're looking at it from a relationship standpoint, next year would be the fifth body that the relationship has transformed itself. Because see, every 7 years you go through a different metamorphosis, and it's a good thing. See, sometimes we think about evolution or change as something that's bad, or everything has to stay the same old, and that's not necessarily true. If that was the case, we'd still be, running around with, stone tablets instead of right now, looking at you and having a conversation with you over technology over a laptop, or people would assume that it had to be a desktop and you have to figure out to get some sort of mechanism to no, the advantageousness of technology has allowed for evolutionary possibility to occur. And the same thing has to happen when it comes to relationships. So as we start to delve in, regardless if it's our book, regardless if it's just, sometimes open it up for questions and, just opening up the dialogue has to be expressed that regardless if you're new in marriage, new in your relationship, or you've been together 40, 50 years. Because we have mentors who are going on 45 years married. There's still a process of evolution that must occur. You cannot be or stay the same and expect for your relationship to be viable.
But let's just talk about it too. I think that we were just so out of like with each other. There's a difference between we found out being in love with each other and out of like with each other. We loved each other, but we were out of like with each other.
Well, we loved each other intrinsically. There was something, that string was still connected. That's the reason why that even through the ups and downs or through the stratosphere of the arguments or the expressiveness that we both were probably doing to each other, that was the string that kept everything together. Now,
What did you say kept each other together?
love, the
Yeah,
love part, intrinsic love.
yeah.
So
Tell them what you
other
mean by intrinsic love, though.
that's that inertness.
Yeah,
That it's almost like the binary thread, that invisible thread that allows you to say, okay,
yeah.
I'm choosing not to cheat. I'm choosing not to do anything detrimental. That binary strand always has to be there because there's definitely times that we have discussions with other couples or when we counsel or coach. And we start asking those pertinent questions. Is there a glimmer of hope? Is there something still left there? There may not be a spark, but
Mhm.
are you telling me that at least the pilot light's on? If the pilot light's on, that means we can work on everything else so we can finally turn the knob so we can get some fire again.
So you may be struggling in your relationship. You may be struggling. It may be about money. It may be about someone's infidelity. It may be about, quality time. Whatever it is that you're struggling in a relationship, you got both parties have to be on the same page. And when we look at our lives, and you are, I want to say this as an entity. Greg was brought in his own way. I brought in my own way. What do I mean? I bring in my own upbringing. Greg brings in his own upbringing, and then you want to create the Clarke house.
Well, that goes back to the nurture nature argument. See, the different environments that we were nurtured or natured in, you start to recognize that is always at play. Now, it's not something that you should ever diminish or be dismissive of because those are some of the qualities that allowed you to connect.
But I don't
Now,
think that we were aware of it. We was not aware that our upbringing was either we were bumping heads with it and we were not able to communicate it properly to each other what we needed. We were doing it, but we were just our house was so in a space of you may have come to a house like that. Our like if I would yell, Greg would not say anything. So in the relationship, you gotta be it gotta be a dance. And that's what we learned in therapy. That's what we learned in coaching because I had to learn the temperature of my husband, even though I kind of like thought I knew him and he thought he knew me. But how long is sex going to hold you down? How long is that going to, how long is that going to be? You know what I mean?
that's
How long,
another kicker.
it is,
Oh,
but what it is we think that if two parties are in, mature adults that go into something, you gotta get what is your definition of what you think a wife is, what you think a spouse is, what you think a partnership is. Because if you have two different ways of thinking what that is, you're gonna clash.
well, that's where communication becomes such a
Mhm.
great barometer. And as they've always said, a man cannot out-talk a woman. Now, there's not, listen, just let me finish. So a man cannot out-talk a woman, but that still does not mean that a man should not be expressive and communicate certain things and also be able to be an affable listener. Because you cannot sit there and just say, okay, my wife has to do X, Y, and Z, and this, that, and the third, and start throwing out all of these expectations, not recognizing that if you're going to be expecting someone else to do certain things, what are the things that you have to be respective of that you should be bringing to the table. And that's why at times when people say, my woman has to be this, that, and the third, and start, going through this caveat list, or vice versa, as the woman says, my man got to have this and six figures and this, that, and the third, and you start thinking about, okay, these are great lists. These are excellent lists. There's nothing wrong with the list. Now, are you actually actualizing what you're in expectation of? The worst thing you can do, and one of the things that I give us credit for, is that we both came from broken situations. We both came from areas where there was still healing that we didn't recognize that we needed. Both of us, not just one or the other. We both needed healing. And as we decided to build a life together, we went from one level to another level to another level to another level to these areas of growth that I recognized that only could have happened because we were in partnership. It wasn't about this is what Cheryl did and this is the reason why we're here. Or this is what Greg did and this is the reason why we're here. No, the reason why we're here, because we had to make a conscious effort to say, you know what? As my wife alluded to that word, the dance, you start to recognize that, how to, sometimes you got to, step up and be in the forefront. And then you have to recognize sometimes you can pull back and allow your partner to be in the forefront, not from a sense of responsibility or this is just their job to do. No, it's recognizing that, wait a minute, if we share the load, we can go further. Now, if somebody just wants to be the leader, we can go about as far as that one person can go. So when you establish yourself in a relationship to see that you're willing to allow for a certain space of evolution, and you have to have the right people that's going to speak into your relationships. You can't be, a couple of years into a marriage and you and your spouse are at crossroads and you run into your girlfriends, or the young man is just, yo, I'm gonna go to the sports bar, hang out with my dudes. Like, wait a minute, okay,
Now
are
you
you?
do need your time, but
No,
the
no, but
relationship.
listen to what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there are times that you can be looking for information and not be looking to be mentored or looking
Mhm.
for a solution. See, your friends will pacify you, and there's nothing wrong with friends. So before anyone starts jumping out there, oh, you can't have friends. No, you're supposed to have friends. I have plenty of individuals who I consider friends who are single, or even if they were in a relationship, maybe they're no longer in a relationship. And me and my wife have been together now over 35 years, almost 30 years married. But you recognize there's certain things I would never bring to some of my single friends. Because if someone who's not going through some of the same experiences as me, they cannot speak into that. And that goes back to even some of the areas as we've been through this journey that we have started to learn that there are certain things that are presented to us that even sometimes, and I don't call it attacks, but situations that even we have to go through that I recognize. The reason why we're going through it because we're going to be able to speak to that when that's presented to us. When we go out there to help someone, when we're here to have these conversations, we're not sitting here acting as if, do you always have to like your wife? And you sit there and someone ignorant say, yeah, I always like my wife. It says they're lying. Because there's plenty of days that I know my wife doesn't like me, and there have been days that I did not like my wife. Now, have I stopped loving my wife? No. But to sit there and say that there are moments, or like when we get into disagreements, and it's healthy to be in disagreement, not to stay in disagreement. But it's okay to be in disagreement because most times disagreement is there to help grow you. Like, wow, I learned something new about my wife. Okay, um like she has a thing with me when I do this. If you ever see me do this, and if I'm doing that towards her, that can be a trigger for her because of certain conversations, certain manifestations. Now it's up to me to remember that. Now I may do it inadvertently, not to be facetious or to be sarcastic, but I'm just looking at it based upon the interaction. But then I still have to catch myself to be like, wait a minute, you know, she made a request. We were in dialogue. We had a conversation. It wasn't a hierarchy. It wasn't like a totalitarian situation. It's like, wait a minute, let us have a conversation about this so that we can be at least expressive, so that can be a conduciveness towards growth. And what we present here, especially from the power of the four A's and being transparent about our own situations, and even as I was we was coming on live today. I'm looking at the book. I'm starting to see there's certain things that we're probably going to create an updated a bit revision and version and things of that nature. And so it becomes much more tenable to recognize. In order to get your driver's license, you have to go through some lessons. You're gonna have to, depending upon your state, they're probably gonna have you sit for an exam initially. Then you're gonna have to go through some testing and road testing, learn how to be behind the wheel. And then that's all that before you schedule your road test. Now think about that in relationships, or even as we've recognized, sometimes the path of your nurturing or your naturing may not have been the greatest. And then you turn around and decide that you're going to find someone else that you want to build a life with. But you haven't really gotten yourself in a space of wholeness yet. So you're still a little fragmented and you're dealing with another person who's fragmented, and then y'all expect it to be perfect. There's no way. There's no way. And that's where we come in now, not to act elitist, but we come here with our specialty of saying that, wait a minute, we are here to guide you. We're here to understand.
Well, let's say this. Let's say this. We always talk about we're a walking intervention because no way, no how. This is how this book came about. This book came about. It says the first thing says how we went from contemplating divorce to a successful, thriving marriage. And like Clarke said, we had an opportunity to do a reset. I like to say course correct because if you're on a course and you see that you can correct that course, but we have to be willing. So the first A in this book, if we talk about it, if I really had to talk about the first A in the book, it really is about acceptance. But the first A is about accepting self. So a lot of times when in our singleness, how many times do we are not clear about who we are as an individual? Like in our singleness, we are not clear in who we are. And I think at 19, I didn't know who Cheryl was at 19. And then I popped out a baby and another baby. And so we are parents of 6 young adults now. But I had a baby every 2 years from 1996. I'm sorry, from 1995. I got pregnant in 1994. I mean, 1995. Yeah, because I got pregnant at the beginning of the year. I got pregnant in 1995, and then I had my last child in 2002.
Mhm.
So I was pregnant.
Yes, we had no cable.
We did have cable.
No,
we
we
did have
didn't.
stuff.
We
But
had
the
cable.
point of the matter is that we had children, and we had to learn how to be parents. And I just want to be transparent with you. A lot of times in our life, we did not know how to parent. We were going from we drew from what our parents did. We drew from our church. We drew from people, and we were just
Well,
we
we
did not know what we were doing.
I would say that even fatherhood, all the different hoods that you experience, and these are the different hoods. There's womanhood, there's motherhood, there's husbandhood, there's fatherhood, all these different hoods. I mean, it's not talking about urban areas, but all these different hoods that we experience. There are times that you can have guides, but until you ultimately go through it and ultimately start to go through the dispensation of it, that's when it's like on the job training. So we had a lot of on the job training where as Cheryl was developing in her respective hoods, as I was developing in my respective hoods, and even some of the things that we may have had as guys may not have been beneficial for certain parts and certain time frames. That's where we get into the book, and I'm very transparent with it now. Certain areas led me towards being in a depressed state, and depending upon what society was saying and what I was manifesting at one point and how that would, mess with my male ego. And so you start to recognize all those different hoods that we are becoming responsible for. And as she alluded to, at 19, she moved into marriage. That's one particular hood. And then we already recognized that she was pregnant. So that means She went from being under her mother's house, and then now all of a sudden I became responsible for her because now I changed her name. She went from one name and now became a Clarke. And now it was like she wasn't going to be a Clarke still living over there. That means I had to already started the space of creating areas and a home. And then we moved on to another space when we started to recognize like, yo, okay.
Can I back up just a little bit? Something that you said. Clarke said, and this is where one of the A's is very important. Clarke said, I took her and I renamed her and preparing a life for her. We never even had a conversation about what that even looks like. Because when I came into the relationship, I've always had a job, I've always worked, and you've always worked. But it just became like this.
Well, we did, I would say this. We did have conversations. We did have a lot of early conversations, even up to the point that we decided to get married. We did have conversations. What it was, they were very surface. And the reason why,
Yes,
this is
I agree.
the reason why I would say it's
I
surface. Like we
agree.
talked about, okay, what could be the potential names of our children? We
Yep,
started thinking
yep,
stuff like that. Okay,
yep.
what would happen? So when we started to get like, there was a situation at one point where, Cheryl was at odds with her mother at a particular time, and we were still boyfriend and girlfriend. And she spent like a week in my home and in the apartment that I had. And then, during that week, we got a little glimpse of saying, what would happen if we was like living in the same space? And we started to recognize like, yo, that first week, that one little 7 day span, and even during
Eye
the,
opener.
it was an eye opener, and then with me being the conduit of saying, okay, let's bridge this gaps because, you need to, go back to your house, and and her mother wasn't going to have it anywhere. At least she knew her child was safe, but at the same time we both knew it's like, nah, we wasn't going to just be shacking up in this house. And so we bridged that gap, but that 7 day span
Mhm.
gave an inkling and gave it gave a basis
Barometer.
point, gave a basis point to say, okay, this could be the potential. What would that type of life be like? And actually we recognized it wasn't great. And the reason why it wasn't great is not making it a negative. The reason it's good that it wasn't great, because if it was great, then we would assume that, oh, this is the way it's supposed to be, and then we would thought that this is the way that we should flow. The reason why it wasn't great because we started to recognize we both still need to grow.
Mhm.
Even though I was still mature and I had my own spot, that's not the point. Just because you have your own spot doesn't mean that you're mature. That
That's
means
good.
you're able to take care of bills doesn't just make you maturity. What is the consistency? What is the game plan? What is it that you're doing to move forward? So as Cheryl was alluding to about the acceptance, that first word acceptance is so key because not only do you have to accept yourself, you have to love yourself.
Yeah.
And you can't sit there and say, okay, I love another if you're not doing the areas or doing the things that allow you to be in acceptance. And to be totally honest, and I know some of you may not like it,
What you guys say.
a lot of y'all don't love yourselves.
That is
You
true.
don't love yourself. And the reason why I can say that confidently, because I remember there was a time frame that I can recognize I wasn't loving myself. If I allowed myself to get to a space when I got pretty much to 420 pounds, I wasn't loving myself. You cannot sit there and say, oh, that's comfortable. See, that's where we start to recognize, and we'll probably talk about that and really have to remember that for a future conversation about pride and ego. Because your pride and ego can start to eat away in the space where you're thinking that you're loving or you're taking care of yourself, and you're really pacifying yourself. You're really diminishing yourself. You can be doing things that is not beneficial for your temple or the place that you inhabit. And I'm not talking about your house. I'm not talking about your apartment. I'm not talking about your room. I'm talking about your body. And until you start to get to that point that, wait a minute, I need to love myself. I need to change the direction. I must move in a healthier span that's going to help with my mindset along with my body. Then you start to say, so wait a minute, you see how even the mind, the endorphins, everything starts to, because now the acceptance of self
Mhm.
is becoming much more paramount. And now if you can accept yourself, then you understand, okay, through that acceptance means I'm going to do what I need to do because I love myself. I love me. And if I love me, that means I can love another. And if I'm willing to love another, then I recognize that I start moving from selfish love or love that's just all about me And then that's when we start talking about those respective hoods. When you start moving into parenthood,
Mhm.
motherhood, and fatherhood, now you're moving into another space where you have to be selfless. And it's a job that once you become a part of that, until your eyes close and you go on to your next work, and that means, you transition out of this physical life, you'll always be that. And you must recognize that it becomes empowering, that these different hoods and it all goes back to initial to its acceptance. Like when we recognized that Cheryl was pregnant in 1995, I had to accept the fact that number one, she's pregnant. Number two, I had to accept the fact I did this. So it's not something just looking at her and be like, oh, how you get, no, we know how you got pregnant. We did the thing and thing against the wall and all kind of stuff and, stretching it out. But anyway, I had to accept this. So wait a minute, this is my responsibility. Now I can go around and say, oh my God, you're pregnant, this, that, and the third, and that vibration doesn't work. You're like, wait a minute. We know how this thing works, and you're pregnant. We've created life. Okay, now what is the next thing? Oh, we can make we had choices, but then at the same time we recognize like, yo, if you're pregnant, I'm accepting the fact that, yo, okay, that means I'm ready for fatherhood. Because if that's the case, we should not have done what we were doing. And then when she accepted the fact, she said, you know what? I'm ready to be a mother. Okay, if you're ready to be a mother and I'm ready to be a father, okay, so the next thing is, okay, let's rock out and see how good of a life that we can create together. And then as she alluded to, after 1995, there's another baby in 96, then a baby in 98, baby in 99, baby in '01, and then, our youngest child completed the cycle in '02. So when we recognize, and all of those areas had to be areas of acceptance because it's not easy to be selfless. See, that acceptance of selflessness in that eros love is the love between a man and woman. Now, when we talk about
Mhm.
agape love is that God-given love, that inertness. And that's why I said most relationships move in agape. When you move beyond the fact of just worrying about the physical and stuff like that, you're moving in that agape. There's that intimate string that allows you to stay connected to the person that you said yes to and that you're building life with. You may not like all their traits. There's probably things that get on your darn nerve to this very second, but there's that string. There's that binary string to say, you know what? At the end of the day, at least I know this person got me and I got them. So, okay, that string is there. But there's going to be things about the individual that you choose to live with that in some spaces you have to start to accept. Like, yo, I know Cheryl's going to do certain things, but now I move in a space of acceptance, not in deriding it or making it wrong. It's like, okay, I accept the fact she does this. And sometimes that used to create conflict, be like, oh, and I would be the same way. So I'm not going to put all it on her. And then when I started to recognize that by being in a space of acceptance, that starts to minimize the disagreements. Because now, instead of me saying, Cheryl, why you did X, Y, and Z? I said, wait a minute, stop. Let me move in wisdom. I know this woman. I see her works. I know this is a part of who she is. Why am I getting disturbed by that? Why am I getting myself? I'm trying to point the finger at her, and it's not pointing the finger at her, it's really pointing the finger at myself. Why am I getting upset about an accept? I've already accepted the fact, wait a minute, she's gonna do this little quirk, she's gonna do this little thing. There's certain things like, okay, let me just get my mind prepared for it, because that's just Cheryl. Now I'm not deriding it, I'm recognizing like, okay, now I've accepted it. It's like, okay, now how do I be with it? How do I work with it? How do I
And that's where it comes with having people to help you, because some of the things that you really loved about your spouse or your partner can get on your nerves at the end of the day. So like if and that's what it goes about, acceptance. So you've heard a lot of our story tonight. So we just want to read a little bit about in chapter 1, the truth about acceptance. No amount of self-improvement can make up for any lack of self-acceptance. Robert Holden.
So that means before we even go into that, think about that quote. No amount of self-improvement can make up for any lack of self-acceptance. Anything that you are desiring, that's why I removed the word want. It's not about you want anything. anything that you desire to do, regardless is to be in a capable, loving relationship, or being in something as an entrepreneur, or moving and being successful in your career path, whatever it is that you choose to desire to do, you must have some space of self-acceptance that that is your choice that you're moving in. Even tonight's title, when we talked about how to fix my relationship, there's an acceptance that people see that word, that three-letter word fix, and start to think, oh, something's wrong, it's broken, it's this. And it says, no, we all need fixing. We all need a fix. And if you're willing to get a fix, and that first fix is that self-acceptance, if you're willing to get the fix of self-acceptance,
Or the awareness
or
of it.
the awareness of self-acceptance, then you're allowing yourself to say, okay, how could this impact my relationship more positively? Instead of looking at certain words as triggers and just automatically jump to the negative, which the mind usually does. It usually always jumps to the negative because that's where we're comfortable at. Okay, they must be talking something about me or talking something bad. No, they're not talking something bad. This needs a fix. We need to tweak this. You need to be flexible in this. Oh my God, I gotta be flexible because that's the only way you're going to be beneficial for your own self-acceptance.
All right, so I'm going to read this. If you got the book, I want to go ahead and you can go onto our website, GregandCheryl.com, and click the link, and you can get it right there, Lulu.com. All right. Acceptance is one of the most important ingredients needed for a successful
Just to
marriage.
pause you for a second. She's reading out of page 17 in our book. It's page 17.
However, the truth about accepting oneself for who you are is the prerequisite to be able to accept your relationship, your partner, or anyone, truth be told. Starting with self speeds up the healing process because you gain personal insight and self awareness of your behavioral patterns. This self acceptance plays a major role in your decision for a healthy, happy coexistence with your partner.
So think about that. And that's just the first paragraph. No, stay on that page. When you start to think about that, we've talked not that we've talking a lot tonight. We've shared in regards of the facts of the different areas that you allow yourself to be in acceptance around. Your acceptance of how you are, your acceptance of your way of being, your acceptance of how your partner moves, your acceptance of all these different areas that you actually create the caveats of acceptance for. Now, as we talked about in this very first paragraph, are you accepting of yourself? You have to look yourself in the mirror and recognize that there could be times or things that may be going on or maybe a little bit off in your relationship that might just be you. Why can I say that? Or how can I say that? Because I remember there were times I had to recognize Greg was at fault. Greg had to take acceptance of like, wait a minute, maybe I was at fault in that. Now it takes two to tango to have a disagreement. But when you start to really be intrinsic and really be self-accepting of self, you can sit there and be like, yo, I think I did that. And if I did that, so okay, how can I fix it? How can I fix it? Not point the finger at my partner and says, well, she still has to fix it. Wait, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why does she have to fix something that you did? And it's so many times in relationships, we can use those caveats, which become almost potential breakdown possibilities, regardless of it's removing affection, removing physical intimacy, removing our communication, removing all these areas. And you start to recognize when those things are happening, there's a breakdown in acceptance because you're not accepting something because now you're willing to put something else there that should not be there because there's a disruption. And so we must be in the spaces of self-acceptance.
So, self acceptance is the individual's satisfaction or happiness with oneself, and is necessary for good mental health. The more you accept and love yourself, the more stable you will be overall. You must first love yourself before you give love and engage in a relationship. Humans long to be accepted for who and what they are. However, it may be a challenge without fully accepting everything about oneself, such as past traumas, insecurities, and upbringing. Do you really know what type of environment you need to feel accepted in your relationship? This can present a challenge if you do not know how to communicate your needs when you are under stress and your feelings are hurt. This is done first with understanding of oneself and how to go about doing it. Some couples figure it out by happenstance. However, most couples never figure it out without some guidance. Think about the times when when you attempted to tweak, shift, or even change something small about yourself. Change can be a struggle. Now, I remember a few years ago, oh, this example here. A few years ago, a newly married couple in their early 20s came into counseling. One of the major issues that came up was the wife perceived her husband's compliments negatively, which constantly sparked an argument between the couple that would escalate. What was really the issue? After speaking to the wife privately, she expressed exactly what the problem was. She had gained a few pounds and felt that her husband was being sarcastic when he complimented her looks. Her husband had no clue that his words was triggering these negative emotions. He was genuinely complimenting her.
Can I pause you right there?
Mm-hmm.
Now think about that. The man was complimenting his wife. Yeah, let's think about that for a second. And this is where it can go back to those nurture nature situations that we dealt with. This is pre-relationship. Now she's gained, that which has happened over a course of time. You're going, things are not going to be the same than when at where they was at the beginning. And so now this example is showing us that the man is sitting there recognizing that as a part of feeding his wife from at least an emotional sense, like, yo, babe, you look good, and this, that, and the third. And now intrinsically within herself, she's feeling, she's not accepting of the fact that, when she look in the mirror, maybe, I got a little roll there, a little tummy tuck there. And especially we're talking about children, I may have some extra lines, and it's like, and the man is sitting there, it's like, wait a minute, I've been through these areas with you. Yo, babe, you still look good, let's go over here, whatever. And them thing. But she is feeling within herself. So now this goes to a very, very intimate point in regards of understanding why self-acceptance is so important and the lines of communication. Because see, if she'd truly communicate, which probably Cheryl's probably going to get to that point. If you're truly in the spaces where something is bothering you, or something, if you're keeping those lines of communication very, very in the spaces of possibility, then it's easy to say, yo, babe, I think I gained a couple of pounds. What do you think? No,
Well, let's just be honest, because it said the problem was that the wife felt insecure about her body and somewhat ashamed of the weight that she gained. She had not fully accepted herself and felt personally attacked when her husband complimented her. It was this insecurity that manifests in the relationship and caused countless fights between the couple.
We should have gave her that opportunity to get that music soul child. So
now listen to this. When this happens, you possibly by happenstance can work it out. However, when it is silent and she's not saying anything or can't find the words to tell him in a safe space, or she's not feeling as though this person is going to take care of my heart, or this person is not going to do something for me. Those are all expectations that she has about whatever.
But they still kind of run towards a negative vein.
Yeah. So when you are triggered in the moment where I'm going, she's triggered in the moment, you are not thinking logically, you're thinking emotionally. Because one thing, he has no clue. He had no clue that his compliments was hitting negatively. No clue whatsoever. And she did not feel as though she can do that. So let's fast forward a little bit. And the solution of it all is we had to recognize how he can hear her in a way that he is able to support her over that bridge. She needs to do the work for healing for that, right? She needs to definitely do the work for healing for that. But you can support your partner when they're going through something. Like when Greg said, when there's a point in his life when he's very candid about when he was going through depression. When you're going through depression, you should never go through anything like that alone. However, he did not feel safe with me to share that space until we got somebody in there with us that was able to now bridge it. So when you are out of like with one another, when you're screaming and yelling, it is not a space where your partner may feel safe about that. He may have also, made fun one time, or he could have made fun of her when she was little. I mean, growing up or whatever about the weight. The point of the matter is that until you accept yourself, do you really accept yourself as you are? The only way the weight can come off is that you accept yourself the way you are in that moment. So self-acceptance.
And then make a new choice.
Yeah, and ask for support when you need it. Because if you're saying, I need support, I'm saying, okay, listen, like Clarke said, he said, Cheryl says, don't say calm down. That's my word. I don't like when you say calm down, stuff like that. It's like, I'm not excited. So don't say calm down. So he doesn't understand it. He just don't say that word, because that's something is bridging the support for me in that regard. It's about doing the dance in your relationship. Now the check-in is about you and your spouse. We are very candid about our relationship. Like I said, we are a walking intervention. We do not always have it together, but we have tools to help us guide us. We have the tools to help us move and navigate through us. So we're going to give you a homework assignment today. I like giving a little homework assignment. I want you to define, and we also have a workbook that you can get. Just contact us. Define self-acceptance in the context of unconditional love for yourself.
Say that again.
Yes. Define self-acceptance in the context of unconditional self-acceptance for yourself, right? So I like this. Go in the mirror.
The mirror?
Go in the mirror. And for 5 minutes, compliment yourself. You cannot use the same word over again.
Come on.
For 5 minutes, just compliment yourself.
Work that mind.
Now, guess what? You may find it to be challenging at first. But for 5 minutes, I just want you to go and just say, Cheryl, I love your eyes. Cheryl, I love your nose. Cheryl, I love your hair. Cheryl, oh my goodness. You see, and now look at me. I'm like, Cheryl, I love your fingernails. You got to find something about Cheryl, I love your spirit. And you cannot say the same thing over again. It may be challenging. So that is what I want you to do. 5 minutes. And do you think you guys can do that in the chat room? Let us know. And if it's some sort of topic you want us to talk about, let us know. Email us at info@gregandcherylclarke.com. We will get your inquiries. Let us know. Schedule some time with us. If you're about to get married, you need premarital counseling. Yes. You want to audit about your relationship?
Yes.
Contact us. You need a guide. And this is what we're here for.
And we also have coaching programs where, you can schedule, where it's a package of sessions where, with us moving in our respective areas of education, we'll, be real with you and at the same time still give you opportunities from a perspective that will allow you to mix, those areas that you can definitely grow and definitely expand in. And so, you go to our website, Greg and Cheryl Clarke with an E at the end.com, and all the different areas between getting our book and, sharing it with others, sharing this link. We're becoming committed to doing this and being in this space, and through that commitment process, that opens up all other dynamics. And I give my wife the last word.
All right. So remember, when couples unite, greatness is bound to happen. Peace and blessings. Until next time, we'll see you soon.